Day 5. We left the rest area in Edwards, Colorado just after 7 a.m. this morning. We felt a little uncomfortable at this rest area since Colorado does not let you stay at their rest areas. Wonder why. Drove over to Walmart to get some food for the dogs. They were charging 8 cents for bags. What is this, Washington State? Well, anyway, we drove up Interstate 70 through Vail, Colorado and into the Eisenhower Tunnel. It is 1.7 miles long and it is located at the Continental Divide. We drove up to an elevation of 11,158 feet. It was very hard to breathe. After coming down, we stopped at the Red Rocks Amphitheater. There was an event marking the 9/11 and there were hundreds of people climbing the stairs. Most were from fire departments from the surrounding area. The security let me in to snap a few photos. This was an amazing event and I got to talk to a few of the firefighters and thank them for what they were doing. I did go into the theater museum and saw a lot of cool stuff. I could also see Denver in the distance. From there we drove by the Air Force Academy and the chapel was still in the box. It's being renovated. Deborah wanted to stop and shop at Cracker Barrel, so we did. We then drove over to the Garden of the Gods State Park. Amazing rock formations. It was very hot, close to 90. We finished the day in Pueblo, visiting my cousins Jared and Shannon Baker. Day 6. It was a trying day, but we made the best of it. Got up a little past 6 and went to breakfast with my cousins, Jared and Shannon. We went to the restaurant called the Hen House, and the food was really good and very big portions. Then the problem started. Deborah, Bailey, Tinkerbell, and I all ended up with stomach issues, but we kept going. Down Interstate 25, we saw 4 herds of pronghorn antelope, a herd of buffalo, a herd of elk, and a chipmunk, and a prairie dog. We went to the Great Sand Dunes National Park. The tallest dune is around 700 feet. While there, the dogs got their Bark Ranger tags for being helpful. It started to rain and rained heavy for about 3 hours. Up and down the mountain passes, up over 8,000 feet, the van struggled to keep up speed. We went through some nice towns on the way to Mesa Verde. We are in for the night at Mesa Verde Campground. 7. Our trip is half over. Last night was really rough, and we went to bed around 9 p.m. I woke up feeling like someone was standing on my chest. I was having a problem breathing, had a bloody nose, and a panic attack. I went and sat in the driver's seat with a pillow and finally fell back to sleep. Not only that, a thunder and lightning storm passed over us. We were there at over 8,000 feet in elevation, so I think I may have had altitude sickness. Today I'm much better, and we got up at 6, and Deb got a shower and went back to bed. We then headed into Mesa Verde National Park at 8 a.m. It was fantastic. Lots of cliff dwellings and canyons. On our way out, we saw 4 wild feral horses crossing the road right in front of us. Then we did the tourist thing and went to Four Corners. Kind of hokey, but we can say we had been there. Saw wild donkeys along the road. We left Colorado, went into New Mexico, then into Arizona, and finally Utah, in the course of 2 hours. Finally made it to Gooseneck State Park for the night. We are camping on the edge of the cliff. Cool thing is, since we were seniors, it was only $5 to camp. Very windy right now, so we plan on seeing it in the morning. Day 8. It was a fun-filled day. We got up at 6 a.m. and watched the sunrise over Gooseneck State Park. I slept pretty good last night, and we left the park and passed through Mexican Hat and saw the Rock. Then I did the Forrest Gump run from the movie, and that's all I have to say about that. We then went to Monument Valley, and it is amazing. We got to the Grand Canyon at 12:30 and set up our campsite. Then we got the bikes off the van and we were off. First stop was Mather Point Overlook. Dad did some shopping and I took the girls back to the van. On the trail there were elk, right there on the bike trail. Looked to the right and there was a big bull elk laying in the mud. Took some great photos. We then got back on the bikes and rode to Bright Angel Trail and walked part of it. Well, part of it. Okay, 50 feet, but I did get on it. Watch the sunset from Overlook near El Tovar Lodge. The canyon is amazing.